مساء الخير جميعا. اولا برحب بكم في احد الويبينارز اللي تتعلق بالنت زيرو كونسبت، لان هو الهدف النهارده ان شاء الله ان احنا نتكلم مع بعض على النت زيرو كونسبت ان جنرال، وبعد كده هنبدا نتكلم على جزئيه اساسيه وهي النت زيرو ويست واتر. اعمل بس شيرنج للسكرين. Can everybody see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. Now this دي مبادرة مبادرة مقترحة لازاي نقدر نعمل نت زيرو ويست واتر في مصر وافريقيا. يمكن السؤال الوحيد اللي انت هتسألوه في الاخر وانا هحاول اجاوب عليه في الاخر، ليه مصر وافريقيا ما يبقاش في دول اخرى؟ The main outcome of the presentation is to develop a simple and cost effective, and underline من فضلك كده the word simple and cost effective initiative to utilize, not treat, to utilize the wastewater and clean the water canals and achieve sustainable development goal number 3, which is good health and well-being, and sustainable development goal number 6, which is clean water and sanitation, and sustainable development goal number 14, which is life below water. Of course, as all of you know, in September 2015, United Nations, they released 17 sustainable development goals, and everybody all over the world, they developed their 2030 vision according to the 17 sustainable development goals. Today, we are mainly focusing on these 3 sustainable development goals, 3, 6, and 14. Now, the agenda for today, first, I will give the objective, followed by the concept of net zero in a global scale. And then I will focus mainly on net zero wastewater. And then at the end, I will get a conclusion, challenges, and dreams, and answer the question is why Egypt and Africa. The objective is to present the core concept of the net zero green strategy in general. And the second objective is to focus on the proposed net zero wastewater strategy, to present the link between the net zero wastewater strategy with the sustainable development goal number 3, number 6, and number 14. Now, in 2015, I authored a book called Sustainability and Innovation. The book is divided into 2 main objectives. The first objective, why sustainability is not implemented as it was planned in 1992. And this is globally, not in Egypt. And the answer to the first part of the book is the lack of innovation. But not innovation in general, innovation linked to sustainability. And not sustainability in general, sustainability related to the concept of net zero. And chapter 3 in this book talks about the next global industrial revolution, which is the net zero concept. Now, the net zero concept is divided into a number of strategies. The first strategy is what is called net zero green strategy. The second part is the net zero energy strategy. The third part is the net zero wastewater strategy. And the fourth, can you mute please? And the fourth part is the net zero solid waste strategy. And the last part of the net zero is the net zero emission strategy or neutral carbon strategy, and that is the initiative declared in last COP26 by United Nations in Glasgow. In Glasgow, they initiated the net zero concept, which is net zero emission strategy, and all countries, they signed this initiative. Now, the net zero green strategy in a simple format, in equal out. When you say in equal out, what you will do with the emissions and what you will do with the wastewater and solid waste. Now, emission and wastewater and solid waste, it has to be utilized, not treated, has to be utilized to prove the concept of green strategy. And of course, the application, as I mentioned just a few seconds ago, it is related to net zero water strategy, net zero energy strategy, net zero waste strategy, etc. Now, net zero solid waste strategy, some people might call it zero waste strategy. Others might call it zero waste. Another group of countries like China, Germany, and Japan, they initiated this concept as circular economy 15 years ago. Whether it's a circular economy or zero waste strategy or net zero waste strategy or Cradle to Cradle, all of them are exactly the same. The approach to utilize 100% of the solid waste. Now, this is not a theoretical concept. It has been implemented in almost about 130, 140 sites all over the world. One of them, which is very, very famous, and it is documented in the internet, it is the Kalundborg industrial estate. Kalundborg, it is located 75 miles from Copenhagen in Denmark. And it is an industrial estate, and they utilized all their wastes. And it is one of the industrial communities with zero waste and zero emissions. But that is not our talk today. I just try to give you a brief idea about all the components of net zero, and then I will focus on net zero wastewater in a few minutes. Now, the second strategy is the net zero energy strategy. We have a number of buildings in United Arab Emirates called net zero energy buildings. When I say net zero energy buildings, means the building will generate enough energy to run the building. We have one building in United Arab Emirates, which was developed by Magid Al Futtaim. It is called net positive energy building, which means they are generating more energy than it is needed. And the difference, they sell it to the municipality. Now, to do that, you have to have first, improve the energy efficiency. Or reduce the energy consumption by insulating the building envelope, by using double glazing windows, by sealing the air gap between the windows and the walls, etc. And energy, or improving energy efficiency, you can reach almost about 30% energy savings with minimum cost, with very minimum cost, and sometimes no cost. Now, after that, then you will move into the energy generation to run the buildings. Now, some people, which I'm in favor of this statement, they said in the energy or net zero energy efficiency is not yet commercially acceptable because they always rely on the PV cells. And the internal rate of return of the PV cells is almost ranges between 6 and 7 years. We always consider the project to be economically viable if the return will be within 4 years. And therefore, some people, which are in favor of this claim, they always claim in a net zero energy building is not commercially acceptable. But Germany, they developed a very nice building in 2015 using something called macroalgae. And this building will generate biomass. Before I get into that, I also want to discuss some of the communities all over the world. They have zero energy communities, but instead of relying only on PV cells, they integrate the renewable energy by solar energy, by wind energy, and by bioenergy. And one of the very famous communities worldwide, it is BZ in UK. BZ in UK, they have enough energy to run the community economically, but it is not mainly from solar. It is a combination of solar, wind, and bio. Now, Germany, they took the bio energy and they constructed this building, which you will see it on the screen here, where they have a macroalgae, which is biomass, and this macroalgae go along the windows as a slurry. and absorb the solar energy and allow the solar energy to get into the building, which is a natural light. And then the biomass will grow and will be collected down in the basement as a biomass, and they generate energy out of it. Now, the combustion process or the emissions from the combustion process, it will be injected to the microalgae windows as CO2 and nitrogen oxides. CO2 with the solar energy will perform the photosynthesis process. The nitrogen oxide, it will act as a nutrient to the micro energy process. And therefore, after starting with 3-4 hours, then the growth rate of microalgae will accelerate, and this biomass will be collected down at the basement and used as a biofuel. Unfortunately, this building did not release any results until today. Then the question is, what is microalgae? Macroalgae, people consider macroalgae as a green gold because it can be used, is the future. It can be used as a food, source of food, like a chat. A chat, they use spirulina macroalgae as a main dish in their meals, which they harvested from Lake Chad. Also, it can be used as a fish feed or poultry feed or animal feed, because macroalgae, there is 100 strains of macroalgae, where some of them rich in protein, others rich in carbohydrates, others rich in fats or oil. And therefore, it can be used with some kind of percentage to feed the fish, poultry, and animals. Also, it can be used as a fuel, which is a biomass. Again, we have, most of the oil and gas companies, they spend millions of dollars for R&D regarding the or microalgae or biofuel. I read an article almost about 10 years ago by British Petroleum. They consider macroalgae as a beyond petroleum, but they have some kind of classified materials where they developed strains with very high percentage of oil, like, for which 70% oil. It is the one available in the market is almost has oil percentage ranges between 25 and 30%. But the one already developed in the oil and gas companies, it has oil content go up to 70%. And therefore, they still have this kind of strains and the technology for macroalgae to extract the oil classified. Also, there is a lot of applications, industrial applications for macroalgae. There's almost about 10, 20 applications for industrial fields. The most important part, microalgae can be used as a media for wastewater treatment, as you'll see it in a few minutes. The net zero carbon emission strategy, or some people might call it a net zero or neutral carbon emission, both are the same. That is what the COP26 last year in Glasgow, they declared by United Nations, because this is the solution to solve the problem of climate change. And I have a webinar, I gave it last July, on 6th of July, and it is on the YouTube, about the net zero, the techno-economic investigation of the net zero economic strategy, because this is the only solution to climate change. Now we move into net zero wastewater strategy. Now, net zero wastewater strategy will be divided into 3 main categories. The first category is using water saving devices. The second category is the full utilization of gray water after treatment for toilet flushing or landscape. And the third category is a full utilization of black water after treatment for landscape. Now I will start with the water saving devices. Water saving devices in United States and Europe can save up to 40% of the water consumption. In Egypt, it is new. It's new, almost introduced in Egypt during last, I would say, about 6-7 years ago. And the amount of water saving in Egypt using water saving device right now is almost between 20 to 25%. but it is mainly for the indoor water saving devices. And the most important part, it is what is called aerated shower heads. Aerated shower heads can reduce the amount of water used during showering by around 60 to 70%. And what they do, they inject air. They inject air with the water. Water will go into something called venturi. And then as a result of the flow of water through the venturi, the velocity will increase and the pressure will decrease and will entrain air into the water. And therefore, it enhances the showering process and reduce the amount of water for showering. Also, leakage. Leakage is a very important and contribute heavily to the water saving device. If you put some kind of a dye inside the flushing tank of the toilet, you will see there is continuous flow of water leaking from the bottom of the flushing tank. All you need is just maintenance. It's just a gasket to replace the gasket inside the bottom of the flushing tank. Water saving device can save the water up to 40%. Now, what is gray water? Gray water is defined as the water from bath, showers, and dishes. Gray water is less polluted form of wastewater. And it's very easy to treat it. There is a lot of benefits of gray water. Gray water represents 40 to 50% of the water consumption within our buildings. Now, if you this will reduce the amount of fresh water consumed within the building. It will also reduce the energy consumption. It will reduce the carbon footprint, which will help the climate change. And the most important part, it will reduce the cost of treatment of sewage. Now, in China have some kind of a tank with a pump and this set 2015 was almost, they sell it for $250, $300 in each. And instead of flushing the toilet with fresh water, they flush the toilet with the water collected from the shower and the sink in this tank. And you know, they always collect the water, and as you mentioned, they have tanks to treat the gray water by very simple process alone. And then they take the flush and send it to the sewer system and take the gray water, use it either for landscape or return back to the flushing tank. In Egypt, we have two pipes, one from the shower and sink, which is 2-inch pipe, and another one from the toilet, which is 4-inch pipe. Both pipes will be collected in one tank and then mixed together, and they send it to the sewer system. Then all we need is just to have a partition between the gray water to separate the gray water from the black water. And the gray water might need another tank for treatment, some kind of a holding pump and a chemical tank, and then take the sludge, send it to the sewer system, and take the water, return it back to the flushing tank, or use it for landscape if you have some plants. This is very simple technology. And black water is the wastewater from the flushing tank, from the toilets. In Egypt, most of all the new have facilities, and they use the treated wastewater for landscape irrigation. The only recommendation which I always say to guarantee safe use of this wastewater for landscape is to have a sand filter to filter wastewater before utilization. One thing which is very important, the amount of wastewater in the new communities is not enough for landscape, and therefore we need the great water and utilize the water for irrigation, and we can utilize for the irrigation. Now we move into the most important part where the liquid waste can be classified into municipal waste, which is sewage, agricultural waste, liquid waste, and industrial liquid waste. Industrial liquid waste, it is a separate category. This can be handled independently. And 20 years ago, Ministry of Environment, they have really excellent program to treat the industrial wastewater, not the treat, to utilize or prevent the industrial wastewater through cleaner production or green technology. And by the way, Egypt was one of the leading countries 20 years ago in this field. But unfortunately, after 2011, this activity stopped. Physically exists, but with zero outcome. And this is another story. We are not going to discuss industrial waste. It can be treated. It can be treated by macroalgae. But wastewater because most of water canals in rural communities are mixed with agricultural waste and municipal wastewater. And therefore, there are polluted. I'll stop here for a few seconds, because I remember 20 years ago, we received from the Munafia Governorate a request from two different villages. One village, they said, people in this village, they prefer to make their tea from the water canals instead of you making the tea from the tap water. And they mentioned, I still remember this word, and الشاي المعمول من مية الترعة مسكرة ومية الحنفية معكرة. And this was very attractive statement to do some kind of further analysis to see why and what do you mean by that. Another village in the same governorate, they sent also another complaint. 50% of the people within this village, they are sick with kidney failure. And we did some kind of walk through village in both villages. And we came up with the water is the major problem. When we took a sample of the water from different sources, we found all of them higher than the allowable limits. And therefore, we submitted some kind of proposal to investigate the reason and find a solution. Then it is recommended to find a mechanism to clean the water canals to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 3, good health and well-being, Sustainable Development Goal number 6, clean water and sanitation, Sustainable Development Goal number 14, life below water. And this mechanism is macroalgae. Macroalgae is a promising source for wastewater treatment. And I remember 30 years ago, we have a pilot project in government of Suez. They took the sewage and they tried to treat it by macroalgae. They have two systems under the umbrella of Academy of Science and Technology. They have two systems. They have a French system, which is earthing pond made out of sand, and American system, which is a concrete raceways. Each system consists of 3 ponds. The first pond is receiving the sewage. They allow this sewage to the solid to precipitate, and then the overflow will go into the second pond. The second pond has spirulina as a macroalgae. In the third pond, they grow fish. They grow mullet fish in the third pond with the macroalgae. I took a sample of water from the beginning of the second pond and the end of the second pond, and also I took a sample of fish from the French system and the concrete raceway American system, and the sample of the spirulina macroalgae. And I found the water at the beginning of the second pond, it is highly polluted. But at the end of the pond, it is within the allowable limits. And the sample of the macroalgae of the third pond and the fish, when I tested toxicity in Cairo University Faculty of Medicine, I found both are safe to eat. Both are safe to eat. And therefore, macroalgae, they use spirulina, by the way, has a very high percentage of protein can go up to 60 to 63%. And therefore, macroalgae can be used as a source of wastewater treatment. Also, a few years ago, one of our students here at AUC, he used something called Chlorella vulgaris. Chlorella vulgaris have very high carbohydrates to treat the industrial waste and the agricultural waste. Also, there is other strains which can also be used to treat other types of wastes. And therefore, macroalgae is the promising media to treat the wastewater, and it adds value to the national economy, because macroalgae with the sun and the combustion gases like CO2 with the sun will act as a photosynthesis, and then the nitrogen oxides from the combustion process will act as a neutrons, and therefore the macroalgae will grow. And then if it is high percentage oil, then it can go to oil extraction process to extract the oil, and then continue as a fuel, or you can use it as a source of food or a source of feed. In conclusion, net zero wastewater concept is a solution to water scarcity problem and will contribute to climate change as well. Net zero wastewater proposed strategy will accelerate the implementation of Sustainable Development Goal number 3 for good health and well-being. If you remember, just the village, we audited, and we found 50% of the people infected with kidney failure as a result of the water quality. The Sustainable Development Goal number 6, which is clean water and sanitation, it is an excellent media to use to treat the sewage and agricultural waste, as well as industrial waste. And of course, it can also guarantee the life below water. The main challenge 3, the selection of the strain, because we have different strains, some of them rich in protein, or some of them rich in carbohydrates or on oil, etc. Then you have to select the right strain related to what? Related to the quality of water and the pollutants, because pollutants will be considered as a nutrients for the macroalgae. And the most important challenge, the application, because you're not going to grow the macroalgae just for the sake of macroalgae. You have to use it either for industrial process or for a fuel, as a biofuel, or as a feed for fish or for poultry. And in Egypt, we have almost about 100 macroalgae farm to grow macroalgae as a supplementary food, where it is already available in some of the drug stores, and also available in some places to grow fish, etc. The main dream is to have all our water canals free of contaminants. I remember almost 40 years ago, I used to go for fishing in the water canal in Mariuteya and Mariuteya. I used to go to catch a lot of fish. When I returned back from the States in mid-80s, I tried to fish in Mariuteya and Mansouriya. I cannot catch one fish. Now, the main reason behind that is what? Is the pollutants. Even I can see by my eye, there is a lot of bubbles, float in the water canal. And one of my friends, he said, oh, as a result of these bubbles means there is a fish underneath the water. I said, no, because of the organic waste get into the water canal. At the beginning, this organic waste will be fermented aerobically until all oxygen will be depleted, and then this organic waste will be fermented anaerobically. Anaerobic fermentation will always release carbon dioxide and methane gas, and therefore these bubbles either carbon dioxide or a mixture of carbon dioxide and methane gas. Then the question which I raised this point at the beginning, why Egypt and Africa? Because we have the technology, and or we have the main technology, then we can just spread it all over the country and transfer this technology to the rest of Africa. The main advantage of Africa is the solar energy, because again, macroalgae, it's an excellent media to convert the solar energy into biofuel. And therefore, Africa has the highest solar energy worldwide. Now, before I stop, I would like to give you a take-home message, not take-home exam. It is time to act. The first act, develop the framework of the roadmap and action plan to solve the problem of water scarcity using the net zero wastewater proposed strategy. The second message is to develop the framework of the roadmap, including the methodology and action plan. What I mean by methodology, the challenges mentioned in the conclusion slide, and action plan to clean the water in a specific water canal. Thank you. And if you have any question, please feel free to raise your question. No questions. Maybe I can ask you a question if there is no questions. Is that practical?
Doctor, can I ask a question?
Yassine.
Yes. Why was the water at the beginning of the second pond not safe for consumption?
The water?
The water at the beginning of the second pond. Why wasn't it safe for consumption?
Okay, now whether the French system, which is the difference is the lining. The French system is mainly made out of sand. The American system is made out of concrete raceways. Now, the first pond will receive the sewage, and it is considered as a sedimentation pond. Now, the overflow will go into the second pond, and the second pond is designed to allow the treatment. And therefore, at the beginning, we still have the sewage. But because of the macroalgae, this macroalgae will absorb these pollutants. At the end of the pond, the water is free of contaminants.
Great, thank you so much.
Whether it is in the French system or in the American system. This was almost 30 years ago.
So both of them are safe for consumption at the end of the second pond.
At the end of the second pond, exactly. Habiba.
Yes, doctor. Do you mind me asking, why do you think that the net zero wastewater initiative يعني هي أحسن حاجة إن إحنا نقدر نريسايكل water أو إن إحنا نقدر نتريت water؟ لأن في تقريبا كذا طريقة إن إحنا أو there are like many proposed initiatives أو أفكار إن إحنا ممكن نعالج المياه بطريقة تانية. Why do you think that it's one of the best?
Economics. If you remember, sustainability is always based on three pillars: the environmental pillar, and the social pillar, and the economical pillar. I always care about the economic, because sustainability means any sustainable solution will return the amount of investment in a couple of years. And therefore, the economics of microalgae is very, very high. That is the reason behind my recommendations to the macroalgae. That's number one. Number two, the macroalgae, it depends on the strains and applications. You might have some kind of pollutants which is not suitable as a food supplement or as an edible food. Then you might produce it for biofuel. Maybe you can produce it for a certain specific industrial application, and therefore there is a wide variety of applications to use different strains. We have almost close to 100 strains worldwide.
Okay, thank you, Professor.
Sure. Ola?
Professor Hagar, thank you for your presentation. I just wanted to share with you that I was supervising a PhD student who used algae for desalination and electricity production. And he tried several strains, and the most one that was positive in producing electricity was something called the Chlorella vulgaris. and we managed to produce electricity, and we managed to desalinate water, like in terms of brackish water or water with salt. And this was a very interesting research. Also, another thing concerning algae is that part of my readings is to use it in aeration tanks and wastewater treatment to decrease the blowers which we use. So we decrease electricity, because algae, in the presence of carbon dioxide in the water, in the wastewater, and the presence of light, will produce oxygen. So this was another interesting thing that I was reading, and the sludge produced will have algae in it, and therefore would be a good source of nutrient when used as fertilizers.
Yes.
So just adding to your part of the algae topic, Ken.
Thank you. Algae is the future. Algae is the future. Farid?
Thank you, Doctor, for your presentation. I just have a question. Seeing the benefits of algae and the potential that it has, why isn't it not yet been like commercially used or being as much? Is it still expensive? Is there lack of awareness, perhaps? Is it hard to acquire? So what's the challenge that is now, especially that Africa and Egypt, like we have the technology, we have the solar or the environmental aspects that can actually make us meet it. So why hasn't it become already the new norm?
Oh, as a matter of fact, it is used already commercially worldwide. And we have a lot of ponds in the United States, especially in Texas and California, etc. And also here in Egypt, we have a number of small farms, but because of the lack of awareness, not that many people. Even we have one fish farm. They use a macroalgae as a main source of feed for the fish. But we have some, but we would love to have 1,000 times what we have right now, especially not in Egypt, in Africa. Because again, in the chat, they harvest. By the way, spirulina is a salt water macroalgae, can grow in salt water with 30 to 35,000 ppm. And therefore they harvested the spirulina and they use it as a main meal in their daily food in chat. But again, it is the future. It's the future. Lina?
Hi, Doctor. Don't you believe that separating gray water from black water needs huge infrastructural shifts? فدي هتبقى very costly وممكن تبقى مش feasible reality.
Thank you. Just try to think about the system here in Egypt. Forget about the system in China, where they use the gray water and United Arab Emirates. But think about the system here in Egypt. In our houses, we have the gray water. It is collected in a 2-inch pipe. And the black water is collected in a 4-inch pipe. And then the two pipes go all the way down to the basement, mix it together in a tank, and send to the sewer system. All we have to do is to do some kind of partition between the gray water, the 2-inch pipe, and the black water, which is 4-inch pipe. And then you might have another tank to collect the gray water, treated by either some kind of chemicals like alum, which is very cheap, and then return it back to the flushing tank within the same network of the flushing tank within your house. If you want to do it, I am sure it will cost some kind of pipes and one tank, and maybe one dosing pump, like half a horsepower dosing pump. And I'm sure this will not be that much of an expensive. That is if you are going to do it in a building. If you are going to do it in a community, then you might have pipes connected together in a lake, small fountain to collect all this gray water, and then use it for landscape. Then for this kind of schematic discussion or schematic diagram, I will say the cost will not be that high. The return is very high. The return, you are going to reduce the water consumption by almost 40 to 50%. you are going to reduce the water going into the sewer system by 40 to 50%. There is a huge amount of savings that is tangible. The intangible part, you are going to reduce energy consumption, which is, related to greenhouse gases.
Yes, thank you.
Sure. Any other questions? iPhone? Who is iPhone?
Yes, Professor Hajar, thank you very much for this interesting topic. I'm Mariam from Bahrain Green Building Council. I have a question regarding this. You mentioned about separating the gray water and the black water. I do understand it's very important, but like in our region, to do it for the individual houses or even in the apartment, it's a little bit costly due to two things, because even the constructor that was going to build the house or build the houses, they are not, majority of the constructors, they are not aware how to do it. I mean, we need like, some kind of awareness or some kind of, I don't know, education, because personally, myself, I want to throw this. So I tried to do it, but unfortunately, I couldn't find somebody to do it. And not only at the beginning, even they are maintaining it is also, it is a little bit difficult. So this is the main challenge that we face as individuals. So
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes, I agree with you. And this requires some kind of awareness program. This requires some kind of training. We did, by the way, this kind of system in one of the buildings here in New Cairo. And unfortunately, they imported all the components from France. When we tried to calculate the internal rate of return, we found in the payback period is almost about less than 1 year. Even all components imported from France with euros. If you do it locally, I'm sure the internal rate of return will be much less. But it requires awareness and training.
Okay, Professor, that's the training is it's available somewhere or some site, or somebody is going to do it, because we need they need this constructor or even the owners of the building. At least they know how they can, if they can enter that kind of training or workshops. Is it available somewhere?
That's why if you try to go back to the title of the talk, it is proposed initiative. And therefore, when I say proposed initiative, it require some kind of plans. And the first part of the plan is awareness program, followed by training. And therefore, this is a proposed initiative where I recommend each government, because each government should have some kind of green strategy, and part of the green strategy is this kind of wastewater utilization plan, not treatment plan, because utilization, it is the key issue behind sustainability.
Yes, I do agree.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor.
Any other questions?
Yes, Doctor, I have a small question. But do you think that this initiative about the division between black water and gray water, would it be possible to do in like old communities, not only new communities, but البنية التحتية to the old apartments, the old buildings? Will it allow something like this to happen?
It depends on the owner, but yes, it can be done. Because again, all buildings in Egypt, I'm talking about Egypt. If you go to your building, you will see in your house, there is a 2-inch pipe, collect the gray water all the way to the basement. Black water, collect the black water through 4-inch pipe and go all the way down to the basement. And then down in the basement, you have a tank, bayara, and within this tank, you mix the gray water with the black water and send it to the sewer system. Now, this tank in the basement or bayara, it can be modified to have the gray water in a separate space than the black water. And then maybe you can have another tank to treat the gray water. The Chinese, they say we don't need to treat the gray water because what is the contaminants within the gray water is very, very small. And therefore they try to take it directly and pump it to the flushing tank, for the toilet flushing. But the people in United Arab Emirates, they always have a separate tank with a dosing pump to inject alum and treat the gray water. There is some sludge will be accumulated. This sludge will be mixed with the sewage in the next tank and then will go into the sewer system. Then from the conceptual point of view, yes, it can be done anywhere. Cost-wise, the payback period, I am sure, will be less than 1 year, because you are going to save water and sewage by 40 to 50%. Okay. Any other questions? I hope I answered.
Thank you, Doctor. Yes, you did, Doctor. Thank you so much.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you.